Hello there guys, what is going on? SonOfChelsea back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Hope you're doing well and keeping safe on this Monday, the start of a new week and the start of the Graham Potter era. We hope we're going to get at least one game this week from Chelsea with RB Salzburg on Wednesday. That'll be the first time we see Graham Potter in the Stamford Bridge dugout. We hope that obviously game will go ahead. It looks like it, and there is some doubt over Chelsea versus Liverpool next weekend. But we're going to get into his first interview, reacting to Graham Potter's first interview as Chelsea's head coach. It was released by the club today in video and also kind of text format. Some really good stuff in it that we're going to delve into. And I also want to end today's video by reflecting on a report in The Athletic about N'Golo Kante and his contract situation. That has kind of blown up again today in terms of the uncertainty, in terms of what Kante wants, what the club wants. We'll get into that as well. Before we do, want to ask you guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you don't miss any of the uploads on the channel. And do me a massive favour, if you are enjoying the Chelsea content, hit that like button because it helps new people find the channel as well. Just quickly, let's get into the scheduling. When are Chelsea going to be playing? How many games are Chelsea going to be playing? Are Chelsea going to be playing at all this week? It looks like RB Salzburg, that game is going to go ahead. We have seen in London a European game in Arsenal versus PSV be postponed, but that is due to more policing. So at least with Chelsea's game for Graham Potter, he will get his debut, as I say, in the Chelsea dugout. But the fixture against Liverpool in the Premier League next Sunday is expected to be postponed due to the Queen's funeral, state funeral taking place on Monday, and the level of policing in London at the moment is pretty high. So it's expected that not only that game, but the Arsenal-Brentford game, I believe on the same day, is in jeopardy too. It kind of feels like a lot of the Premier League games that weekend, next weekend, are going to go ahead outside of London. But in London, that's kind of the major problem for obvious reasons. Another thing, Graham Potter, before we do get into his first interview, his first press conference facing the media is going to be at 3 p.m. tomorrow. So that's going to be exciting to hear his first words in front of the media along with this interview. But let's get into it. I think it was very exciting to hear Graham Potter speak. It wasn't that surprising how insightful, how thoughtful he was. As I'm sure a lot of you have, we've been watching a lot of Graham Potter. We've been dissecting his tactics. We've been reading a lot about him, the type of character he is now. He's Chelsea's head coach. But I think he set the right tone. Every coach is going to be different, and every coach is going to prioritize different things. And some people connect with characters more than others. That's the truth of it. But I think for what he needed to do and what I think the club would have wanted to represent of Potter, particularly after a challenging week whenever you change a head coach, I think that the transition from, say, Lampard to Tuchel needed to be smooth. It needed to be quick, and that's exactly what it was when Tuchel did that first press conference. That was so impressive. We have to see Potter's first press conference as Chelsea's head coach tomorrow. But this was kind of a taster. We got some really, really, I think, good quotes to pick out from. So let's get into them. He said, on the players, you have to understand they are human beings first, and the key thing was to understand them, what motivates them and what they're like as people, and then from that try to come to some common ground. It's a combination of football and human values that we try to work with. That is one of my favourite quotes that he said today. I want a tactically flexible, attacking, possession-based team. Players that are brave, that aren't afraid to make mistakes, that can get on the ball and show courage and really try to enjoy their football. If the players are enjoying their football, there's a chance that the supporters will enjoy it as well. That's how you grow and develop as a club. Styles of play don't make you win games. The challenge is having players believe in it and how it works. In my position, you cannot use time as an excuse. You can talk philosophy, identity, all these nice words, but you have to think in the short term as well. We are in a results game and you have to try and do your best to win. So some really good stuff there. I think in terms of players showing bravery on the ball, showing a bit of courage, taking risks, those are criticisms we've had about Chelsea in recent years, and I'm not just pinning that on Thomas Tuchel. I think you could pin that on recent head coaches and some of the players we've had, and kind of the feeling at times that Chelsea are quite repetitive in the way they build up, and whether Graham Potter can kind of get around that, whether he can improve that over time, is the big question. I think my favourite quote is the one where he speaks about sort of a combination of football and human values, and being emotionally intelligent is one of those things that just consistently comes up when you read about Graham Potter. And we've spoke about this before on the channel when in recent days we've been talking about Graham Potter and what he could bring to Chelsea. It's no real surprise, and particularly in the modern game, I think particularly with the group of players he's going into in that dressing room and what he's going to have to encounter, the ups and downs, you have to have that connection nowadays, and hopefully that proves to be a key ingredient for Graham Potter being successful at Chelsea. I think in terms of some of those players, we can really sort of dive into those quotes and kind of take more out of them than maybe we should until we see the actual decisions that Graham Potter makes on a regular basis with this squad. Until we see the performances and the tactics, those are the things in front of us that are obviously going to matter the most. But I think those things about culture, and particularly the way he addressed those questions in that video and in that interview, I think were really fascinating, and they kind of do give the impression of the type of unique character that Potter is and what he values as a coach. So I was really intrigued and inspired by that, to be honest, and hopefully it reflects in a very, very good team that we can all enjoy watching in the coming weeks. Let's get into N'Golo Kante. I think that this is something we have spoken about a lot, but it was interesting getting a new report from David Ornstein in The Athletic today regarding this situation. Kante is not accepting Chelsea contract offer. Apparently Chelsea have made a verbal offer. The 31-year-old France international has entered the final 12 months of his contract, and unless there is progress in talks over an extension, Kante will depart as a free agent next summer. Conversations have been taking place since 2021, and the previous regime were proposing fresh terms spanning 3 years, plus the option of a fourth, prior to all negotiations halting when the UK government imposed sanctions on Roman Abramovich, which heavily impacted Chelsea. Discussions could resume, and in August, it is understood Chelsea tabled a new verbal offer to renew Kante's deal for 2 years with the option of adding a third. The player, though, is presently unwilling to accept this and would be looking for a greater duration. Ornstein goes on to reference, of course, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang signed this summer, Kalidou Koulibaly, who is Kante's agent, under a 4-year agreement in July. Before exiting, Tuchel suggested Kante's injury rate was a factor in deliberations about whether to award the deal he expects. Despite recording 42 appearances last season, the Frenchman's time on the pitch was limited. He has also missed 5 of the possible 7 games in the current season. The counterpoint is that when Kante does feature 262 times since moving, he tends to shine. In August, his victory away at Everton and the home draw against Tottenham, he was one of the stand-up performers. In Kante's absence, there have been 3 defeats, and Tuchel obviously was sacked. Adam Newsom, my colleague at Football London, gave me these stats. With Kante under Tuchel, Chelsea had a 58.5 winning percentage in the Premier League. Without Kante, it drops to 47.6. My feeling on Kante, I think that Chelsea have to be brutal in this situation and decisive. Decisive, I think, either way. I really don't want another year like we have with Rudiger and Christensen. And sure, we can make the excuse in the end about the sanctions, but we knew those contracts were coming down long before we got to sanctions. And that was one of my frustrations with the previous regime, allowing so many contracts in these situations to just go on and on and on. That leaves you in these really awkward situations and inevitably forced us to spend more in the market than we probably should have if we had kept one of those 2 defenders. With Kante, I can understand why people want to keep him, because he has been an extraordinary player for Chelsea. One of our greatest ever signings. That is not hyperbole. That is just the honest truth. I mean, within a season, he'd won the Premier League title. The Champions League winning run is worth... I mean, you think about what he cost Chelsea, 35 million, I think it was, from Leicester in 2016, and what he's given to us. I mean, in terms of value, me and Jay McIntosh on our pod recently were sort of joking about when we're talking about what Chelsea players are worth and their value, it's how many Kantes they're worth. And it just shows you what Chelsea have got out of N'Golo. I don't think him leaving for free is a disaster at the end of the season. I really don't. I mean, because I think we've extracted, as kind of shallow or kind of distant as it sounds, kind of clinical in terms of the value we've extracted from Kante, but it's true. We have got one of the greatest midfielders in European history. That's just true. I think chapters will be written about N'Golo Kante and the impact he had over his career. But you cannot rely on a player who is consistently injured like this, and particularly in a central midfield that is already uncertain, that already has flaws. I don't think you can refer to someone as a key player if they're only playing 40% of your games, or they're missing consistently stop start. That has been Kante since Baku, obviously, and I don't think that's going to change. Something radically has to improve with him on a fitness side of things, and even then, I mean, I think Chelsea have been a lot more careful with him, but he's still picked up these injuries. Sure, the fear is that he goes somewhere and rediscovers fitness, but I don't think at this point we can begrudge Kante wanting that because of what he's done in European football. And I also don't think it's ridiculous of the club to be looking ahead in central midfield. But it seems like the club are willing to offer him something. It's whether they can meet that agreement. I personally think just a smarter idea is to look ahead with Chelsea's midfield and where we can improve and the players we can bring in for the future to really evolve that area. I don't think Kante, just in terms of his position, can be regarded as a vital player. You can't go in leaning on him to be fit, because we see that's a flawed strategy, and that's a shame, because when he is available and he's at his best, I don't think there are, still at his age, I don't think there are many midfielders better in European football in terms of what he does and being such a unique talent that he is. And still, Graham Potter, I'm sure if he can get Kante fit and firing, can be a very, very big player for us, and maybe the complexion changes with him. We hope, because watching Kante is a phenomenal sight. It really is one of the best in football. But I just personally feel that this might be the year. I think cutting ties with players is always better too early than too late. And I think that just hanging on, hoping that something's going to change with Kante. Also, if you're hanging on with Kante and you're not evolving the midfield yourself, I think that's kind of a double blow with Chelsea in recent years. I think if we keep Kante but then you sign someone else, you bring in new ideas, new energy into that midfield, so then he isn't the one you're sort of clinging on to as this is the transformative player, and if he's not available, we're screwed and our win percentage dramatically drops in the Premier League. Then I think that's a better situation. Let me know your opinions, because obviously Kante has been a legend for Chelsea. He really has. I think he absolutely is in that bracket. I think he has to be. He's won the Premier League, the Champions League, the FA Cup, the Europa League, the Club World Cup. You know, he's won nearly everything with the club, and he's obviously, particularly that Champions League winning run, I think without N'Golo Kante we do not win that competition. So listen, I know people rightly have affection towards him, and we saw, particularly in that Spurs game, if he is ready and willing to go and he's fit, still can put on a big performance in a big game. But that is it for this edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch it. If you did enjoy it, please hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you don't miss any of the uploads on the channel. Follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again very soon. All the best.